to the Florida Masters Podcast. My name is John Barrett, your host. Hey, I'm back with a banger. I'm super excited for my guest. He's a mentor, father, brother, and just like all around amazing person to me, all at the same time. But before we get into who he is and what he does, we have admin tasks we have to take care of because we do what we have to do, right? Please follow us on all platforms at For the Masters Podcast and on YouTube at JB the Masters Podcast. All right, I have the legendary Sean Doyle with me today. Coach, how you doing?
Good, John.
Hey, I'm excited to be here with you for many reasons. I'm excited to catch up with you. But overall, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's good to see you.
Yeah, for sure.
It was fun to have a weekend with a lot of the guys and get to hang out with you last night at Kyle's wedding. So I'm doing really well.
For sure. It's been almost a decade since I first met you.
Yes, I thought when you told me you wanted to do this, I thought it would be important that we talk about how I met you too at some point in this podcast, because I'm sure your viewers would enjoy that story.
For sure.
Whenever it's right.
For sure. And I was like, hey, Doyle's going to tell you the story. It's from my girlfriend. I was like, dude, he's going to tell you the story of how we met. But, that visit was super important in how it shaped me, so I appreciate you. And I'm going to give you some more flowers later on. But let's tell everyone like where you're from and how your upbringing was and how we met.
So I grew up in the Ohio Valley region in Wheeling, West Virginia. I spent the first couple years of my life in Eastern Ohio and then moved to Wheeling. I grew up in Wheeling, grew up in a private parochial school. I went to public school at Buckeye Local High School with my father. He was a coach and administrator. When I graduated high school, I was fortunate enough to have a chance to wrestle at Cornell, which was an incredible experience for me. Wrestled there 4 years. And when I graduated, undergrad in business and economics, I did the business world a little while on the golf course, transitioned into education and coaching for about a decade. And now I'm working in the architecture and engineering world. So a little bit, a lot of different experiences for me, but
for sure. So you grew up in this area, like the Wheeling, like tri area essentially. So like you wrestled at Buckeye Local, that's what it's called, and your dad was a coach?
Yeah, my dad was a coach of I want to say 20 years. Kind of started a wrestling program at Buckeye South, but then it became Buckeye Local, which it is now. And then he went into administration. So he was a coach at the time, which is why we came to Ohio, my sister and I.
For sure. And you wrestled in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
You wrestled in Ohio. How was your high school career?
It was good. It was. We'll talk a lot. I think it was a learning experience for me. I placed at the Ohio State tournament once. I finished third. My junior and senior year, I think I would have been projected like 1-2 or 2-1 or something like that. I had knee reconstruction my junior year. I tore my ACL, and then my senior year, I think what most would deem I got upset in the semis. But anyway, it was all for the right reasons, and I was learning, and it kind of, again, I think it all puts you where you're supposed to be. So
absolutely,
it was a great experience though. Wrestling in Ohio, one of the best states in the country.
Yeah, so obviously for everyone watching and listening, like Ohio State's probably one or two top wrestling states in the country. So placing third or even making it to the Ohio State tournament is equivalent to winning it somewhere else. So you end up going to Cornell and being coached under the legendary Rob Cole, who's now at Stanford.
Yeah, which has amazing in so many ways. I mean, Coach Cole continued to be a mentor to me throughout my career. One of the most creative, entrepreneurial, CEO type people I think you'd ever meet. I'd argue he's been as influential to NCAA Division I wrestling as anybody ever.
For sure.
So yeah, I got to wrestle for him for 4 years. I started 2 to 3 years at Cornell and had I think a good career. I never made the NCAA tournament, but again, had a lot of good experiences there. And again, meeting the people that are still friends to me, and Coach Cole obviously continues to be influential.
For sure. And obviously, as we talk and things like that, I ended up being your graduate assistant, and I remember one of the first things you told me, hey John, it's a lot about coaching, but it's a lot about the business aspect of it too.
Yeah, I think I would say when I said Coach Cole's been as influential as anyone, 20 years ago, running a wrestling program was much different than it is today. You got in, you wrestled, you coached, you developed skills, but you didn't necessarily focus on the program, marketing, alumni relations, a focus on building facilities and what it meant to make your program attractive. A true CEO. And again, anymore, if you go to any development across the country on wrestling, it's about how to be a CEO.
For sure.
And I think that's much to do with Coach Cole's focus on that.
Nah, for sure. And and it was evident in the program we built. Like, essentially, we came in, we had a regular size room, probably like 25 guys in it running over each other, and slowly started to fundraise, get the youth program in there, knock down the wall. Right at one of the best facilities in the country at his height.
Yeah, it's funny. Coach Irwin and I were talking about that in the car yesterday, and I was saying how you don't go back and do the what ifs, but the program at Wheeling Jesuit was as set up as I think it could possibly be with facilities. And I think when you talk about that from this conversation, it was building relationships across campus.
Yeah.
That meant building relationships with the vice president of academics, who we needed his academic space.
For sure.
Building a relationship with your AD and your president, and there were so many people involved with saying, yeah, you can tear that wall down and double the size of your room now, but you have to be thoughtful about that and how to approach it. And we had a lot of people on board with that.
For sure. And I think that was like super evident to me. I just thought it was regular when I met you, because we were involved with campus ministry, always having campus mini president at our matches, like a whole bunch of community service. And like, I think everyone started to follow suit, even with morning practices.
Yeah, I think, so it's funny now that, you guys are getting older, and obviously, John, you're doing this, which is an incredible platform for you, and we have guys interviewing for college programs, and I've had these conversations a lot recently, and it's when you go into an interview, having the understanding of what your program, what the university's interest is for your program. And it's not to create a national championship team.
Sure.
It's a bonus, but it's to create a program that makes the university proud. It supports enrollment, it supports the financial state, it supports community relationships. Your university's proud of you.
Yeah.
And you become something they're proud of, and you're protected when you do that. But that's hard to do at a certain age, when your focus is like, I can win, I can create national champs. I think we did a really good job at it at Jesuit.
For sure. And that's the philosophy I took with me, and I think it was super pivotal in my development as a coach, because again, I was young. I still wanted to wrestle in the room with the guys. I still wanted to tell them I believed in them more than they believed in me, kind of like you believed in me, and took us to that next level. But I really took the CEO mentality of running a program.
Yeah, I think it translates across everything you do. We're talking wrestling right now, but again, if it's your family, when you start building a family, or if it's in other professions, like for me and my current profession, it's all relatable. It's about how you treat the people around you, and it's gaining support for the things that you want to do, but with integrity and honesty. And I thought, again, yesterday we were talking about this. I thought at Jesuit, one of the things too was we had 40, 50, 100 guys that all kind of had the same interest in what they wanted, and that's pretty key.
For sure. And what's crazy about that too, the buy-in is super important, because when you came and recruited me, well, when I reached out to you, but when I got on campus, you were so different, because all the coaches said, John, by your third or fourth year, you can do something special. You told me, let's get a national title together.
Yeah, and you're right. And again, there's something to be said for your confidence in people and how that translates into their own performance. Coach Cole, I don't know that anyone was better than that, with him getting freshmen to perform immediately. But there's that. And then again, the other part of this is when you recruit, you get a lot of no's. And I can tell you, the thing I always said about that was, I moved on. Yeah. If someone says no, there's a reason they said no, and it's probably because they didn't fit what you were telling them you wanted. And it's, again, why we never got outside of that. We recruited people that were bought into what we wanted to do. Yeah. We didn't seek the easy transfers that I would see so many other programs doing. Sure. and there was sustainability in that. We did it the right way, I thought.
For sure, and I think your marketing style too was just like you didn't throw a lot of money at guys. You told them, hey, this is where you can get a good education. Like whether you do, hey, you'll become a better person here. And for me, working at a few universities now, a couple, the quality of kid was drastically different. And no shot to them, but just like the culture around it.
Yeah, and that's, you said it. I mean, you're obviously, money's one thing. I think when a university knows that you can support them at a level we were, 40 to 50 kids, you're much more apt to get scholarship money. And again, Coach Irwin and I talk about a lot, but I said, there's the people that are going to make excuses for why they can't get somewhere, and then there's the people that are going to figure out a way to get there.
For sure.
And for us, it was, we'll go recruit 40 or 50 kids, and we'll get more scholarship money, and we can go up our ability to recruit college superstars. And you balance it. You've got your superstars, you have your support people, you have your kids that are impacting campus in all kinds of other ways, and it's all mixed together into something special.
For sure. And I think your CEO mentality, a lot of people recognize it on campus, and it's just like, man, there's something different about these Western kids. They come in here, they're respectful, they at least show up to class, whether or not they fall asleep or not, that doesn't matter. And I might be guilty of that, me and TJ. But, they recognize that in you. So you had the opportunity to like leave the athletic side and get into administration. So how was that transition? And I think you were very impactful in that short amount of time.
Yeah, it was awesome. I absolutely, again, I know there's a lot of Jesuit people probably follow your podcast. The 6 years at Jesuit was probably the 6 best years of my life. I thought I'd be there decades, and obviously everything takes a turn, and for the reasons it's supposed to happen, so I have no ill will about that. But yeah, the enrollment side was pretty amazing. I made a jump there. And I loved it. I was able to influence the school. We were shifting our identity as a school, which is, again, in modern day, we needed to. And we were headed in a really good direction, you know.
Sure.
And but it was a team atmosphere, It's still goals. It's still a team. It's still what I translated from wrestling was you had to recruit a consistent message of what you wanted your university to be,
For sure.
which was an incredible Jesuit institution with an opportunity at education for a population that may not have that opportunity otherwise. And so, I mean, I was on fire with it.
For sure.
Those couple years in enrollment were 2 of the best years of my life.
For sure. And
And
people loved you. People, like, even your team members loved you. And, like, because, again, if you never played sports and you don't have an opportunity for a coach that can coach you to be better, to hit these metrics, like, hey, I'm getting an admissions job, and, I got to meet a quota. But, like, hey, they're showing me how to do it. And I thought that was so cool. Because people, they came, man, I love the way he manages us. And, like, it's not even a manager, it's a coach.
Well, it's like, I just believe this. I think, like, in anything that you do, you show people that you have a genuine respect for them, and then you show them you care about them. And when there's a mutual respect and care, then you can do anything you need.
For sure.
Because it's like, we all know you're going to have difficult times and difficult conversations, but when there's a genuine respect and care, you can get past those.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, it's my current job, right? I've been doing this 3.5 years. I'm in an architecture and engineering firm, something I've never done, but it's coaching, it's developing, it's helping people maneuver in their career. It's helping figure out how do we get better. And so it's all translatable,
For sure. I even saw it, like, and then it just goes back to, like, the assistant coach being a coach, and then ultimately a manager in general. I was drastically different because you kind of let me get my foot wet as a right to, like, the administrative, and then I feel like slowly I got there. And then when I went to D&E, Coach Bowen, another phenomenal coach, I put him up there with, coaches like you, honestly. He's at Millersville now doing great things. But he gave me opportunities to do stuff that, like, more responsibility, and I just felt like I was ready for it, And it just makes the big difference, and instead of, like, spoiling relationships because I'm, like, this young hot-headed coach.
But you exceptionally well and natural to you as you care about people. So again, that whole idea of, like, caring and respecting for people breaks down all your bridges or barriers almost immediately.
For sure.
Like, that's one thing I would say if you look across, like, call it a struggling relationship or program or business, you'd most often find there's some major barriers with things like that, where the respect, the care for other people doesn't exist, and you create real short-term successes that there's no sustainability.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So another question I always want to ask you, so when you would give recruits on campus, you kind of like pair them to guys that match their temperament and style. Like you put me with like Brandon Tinney, Marcus Jean Batiste, like all these different kids. How did you like do stuff like that?
Well, it was, again, when you have to be thoughtful around what you're going to do, I think, if you want to be successful. I could have easily just given it to housing and said, pair these guys up. And I had contention, I remember at the time at the university, because they wanted to have kids scattered everywhere. It was like, we don't want to put the kids together. but when you're building a family and a culture, I mean, to me, it was non-negotiable. So yeah, you wanted to look at their personalities. Some of them needed different levels of support. Some had very clear interests of where they wanted to impact the world or their school or their life, and you wanted them to have some like-minded people around them. But the other part, which I always say was so cool about our program, was you had guys from every walk of life. You had guys from the inner city, you guys had guys from rural West Virginia, rural Ohio, rural PA, which was so cool, because you have an opportunity to like start to understand where people come from. And again, that's really important, is understanding where people come from rather than making a decision about who they are.
For sure. And it's so crazy to me, because being from inner city Richmond, I'm friends with people who live out here and hunt deer and stuff like that. And I remember when we wrestled in New York, and we went out there, and some of the guys didn't want to cross the street, get the cars, and I was like, oh, these guys really aren't from here. And it was beautiful, though. It was beautiful.
It is, and I've talked about this in other venues before when I talk about leadership and care for others. It's like, again, we're evolving into a place where we're real quick to be judgmental of people, rather than the opportunity to say, where's that come from? Like, where'd you grow up, or understand, and like, when you understand how someone was brought up or why they view the things, it doesn't mean you'll come to the same outcome, but you're going to have a different view of why,
For sure.
which probably lessens your disdain for them or feeling. So that's a really important one, and I think, again, any business, any organization, any team should be focused on that.
For sure, and that's something big I learned from you, because when I was a GA for you, I remember something had happened, especially around like the racial tension time for things. A guy on our team did something, pretty not intelligent at the time, but obviously me and you knew the person, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? It's just more of like, hey, I wanted to communicate to understand why you did what you did, and from your point of view. And then like you just talk about it, whether I agree with it or not. Like I still love you,
Well, you can't. Again, that's right. That's delicate on a lot of levels. I mean, there's acceptability of things, but no, I recall the situation, and there's forgiveness in it. Your goal is always to help somebody get better, and your interest in it wasn't to show hatred for the person or get them in trouble. It was like, I want to understand it, and your next move was how to help that person be better for it. And like, how incredible would it be if that was the sentiment of everybody?
For sure.
That rather than just say, I hate you or fire you or get. I mean,
For sure.
I had funny parallel. I had a situation at work last week. A guy kind of got upset and acted in a way that he was not proud of on a site, and somebody said, you want to remove the person from the site. And my first response immediately was no. Like, I think someone needs to talk about it and make sure that he understands the next steps. But no, your interest shouldn't be to get rid of them.
For sure. If anything, like a get well plan, talk to the person, and like understand what happened, and then try to help them. Yeah, for sure. I think okay.
No, that's good.
I think another thing too was that like as repercussions from that situation, one of my buddies had emailed you some crazy emails, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, man, he's gonna be upset and stuff like that, and then you just thought it was so funny.
Well, I wanted to talk to him. Again, it wasn't. Again, in general, you like in my spot, I could have gotten like upset about it or been like, what the heck's going on? But like, you want to meet the person and like understand it. And again, I'm always I would use the word obsessed. Like I want to understand where somebody's coming from, or if I walk into a room and I'm watching people behave in a certain way, like I want to know where they're coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just, that's the place I want to come from.
For sure. And I think you do that innately, because I remember we used to be at matches and like you would just be like this, a kid's like wrestling and something happened unfortunate, and you're like, yeah, like you're just trying to understand what happened in that match to this guy, and you would methodically like break it down, and like then you understand it. So it helped in wrestling as well.
Yeah, it's probably maybe the most common topic I would talk about with emerging coaches. You know, as you started to get into it, was you better come from a place of understanding where each of those people are. Like walk their shoes. I know that's cliche, but if you can do that well, then you're going to be successful. Because again, that's the standard words, empathy there, right? It's like understand where they're at. But there are so many barriers people put in front of them because they don't take one attempt at like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a huge one.
And you think that transcends coaching, but just relationships in general.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And it's why, all of us, right? Like you're on multiple group texts of guys that graduated in that program, and we all have the relationships we do because, again, everybody knew there was sincerity and integrity to all that.
For sure.
And it's why, I said this to Coach Irwin yesterday, like how cool would it have been at Jesuit now, call it 10 years in, to have the alumni that we have and think of how much they would have cared for the program.
For sure.
Because of all that,
For sure. And I remember we did a get-together a couple of years, and we probably had 40, 50 guys on there.
Yeah, that was awesome. I think we had like 75. Now, we had a lot of non-wrestlers on there too, but...
Yeah, for sure. And we definitely need to do that again, for sure. And it was like during COVID too, and I was going through a lot of my personal life, so it helped a lot.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you putting that together, Coach.
That was pretty cool.
For sure.
That was our Cardinal Culture Facebook Live, right?
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great. So Coach, in between you graduating from Cornell and then eventually getting back into teaching and coaching, you had like a stint where you walked at a golf course. So let's talk about that period in your life and what you were doing. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I graduated, and my dad was a lifelong educator, but my dad was like, wanted me to do more.
Yeah.
Standard, my dad was like, do more,
yeah.
Pushing me. So I never pursued education. I graduated, with a business background, and I got into golf. So I had a chance to work at Augusta National during the Masters, which was really cool. I actually caddied around, which is a crazy story, but I did that. I got to go out to Pebble Beach and implement a program. And then I wanted to be back closer to home. My family is really important to me, so I moved back. I worked in Cleveland for a while in retail, and then it hit me that I wanted to get back into coaching.
Yeah.
And so that was, which again, you talk about life and where it takes you. That was all, it all occurred and was great. And then wrestling, coming back coaching, led me, to coaching maybe the best wrestler I've ever coached at the high school level, Dirk Bauer, who is how I met my wife now, Amber. So again, when you look at how all those things lined up, it was, it was God's plan, and kind of that was a pretty good learning experience for me before entering education, and now I'm back outside of education.
For sure. And like, so everyone listening, like, pretty like a lot of transitions in his life. So went to Cornell, like the prestigious Cornell University, an Ivy League institution. Then he went into caddying and, at one of the most prestigious like golf tournaments in the world. And that's pretty cool. And then came into coaching high school too, and building a really good program there as well. And then coming to college and building, one of the top programs. I think we need a flow documentary, by the way. Like I don't know, rise and fall. Would you go to fall?
It would be good. I mean, there would be a lot there, but
for sure.
The Jesuit story is pretty amazing and sad at the same time. But yeah.
No, for sure. So, and now you're in architecture right now. You're director of operations, and your leadership, purely leadership role, you would say.
Yeah. We're on an incredible firm. Our owner is one of the greatest visionaries I've met in my life. Again, and fortunate working for David. but he was on the board at Wheeling Jesuit at the time, and so when things happened at Jesuit, we linked up, and I've been there 3.5 years, and basically running day-to-day operations for the company. A fast-growing company, and doing a lot of amazing things, and so and it's all people. I mean, my day is spent, whether it's internal staffing and helping people develop, or hiring and working with clients outside of our office. So I enjoy it a lot. It's different, much different than anything I've done in my 20 years, but
that's awesome. And so like all this leadership experience you have, and that's another thing too, experience matters so much, and I didn't know when you first told me that, but like I'm 28 now, and experience matters so much.
One of my favorite lines that I said if I ever wrote a book would be, when people are older, they'll say to somebody like, well, when you're my age, you'll know.
Yeah.
And my response to that is, well, they're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah.
So like we get real, as parents or managers, we get real agitated or frustrated with, why can't you see this?
Yeah.
And again, my response is, they're not.
Yeah.
Like, you and I were talking before we came on here, like I would laugh at myself 10 years ago or 15 years ago, like how I viewed things. Now at the time I thought I was doing it right, and I was proud of myself probably, but you keep working to get better, and you have humility in it, and all of a sudden I'm 44 and I look back at 34 and be like, oh gosh, that's how I saw things. So yeah, man, experience. You can read all the books you want and have as many mentors as you want, or as many influencers, but you've got to experience it. And I always say, like, I think people, as they get older, you can help somebody else learn it before you did.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Some of those lessons you learned along the way, but nothing replaces experience.
For sure. And so I didn't really realize it until like a few years ago, and I'm like, man, this is like the same situation Doyle was talking to me about. Where a guy break up with his girlfriend and he's in a room getting buried, and I'm like, yo, you good? Like, this is unsafe at this point, And then like I already knew what was going on, and we talked about it, worked through it, and we got through it. So when are you gonna start your book?
Oh no, I don't know if that's not anywhere close.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously you learn a lot, and I always genuinely, like, I want to be able to share experiences and lessons and things that you think could be impactful. I mean, I get to do it with my children every day, which is amazing. I get to do it in my church, like, which is really cool too. But no, I don't know. I think any opportunity you can find to like you're doing this now, which is wonderful. I mean, I know you're approaching 50 podcasts, which every one of those is focused on pulling like some information or experiences out of people that might help others.
For sure.
And I think one of the bigger topics I always love to discuss is like how people overcome, challenges, adversity, setbacks, tragedy.
Yeah.
And I always think like every one of those experiences has a ton of value in it.
For sure.
It has value in it for you as you learn. It has value in it for the person that's going to probably learn from you one day.
Absolutely.
And so again, when people can have a good perspective on setback, failure, have an understanding it's going to occur, it sort of changes who you are, rather than the poor me, why me, like
Absolutely.
The world's against me mentality, which again we need to get away from.
For sure. And I'm not gonna talk to you about your podcast too right now, but everyone who comes on there who talks about podcasts and audio and stuff like that, I challenge them. So, Coach, during your next speaking engagement, I challenge you to record it.
Yeah.
And post it somewhere.
Yeah, I've thought about it. The last couple of years, I've had a couple opportunities to get in front of different leadership groups around this area, or ADs, coaches groups, and I thought I should have videoed it. You may hear my children here in the background. But yeah, I think there are opportunities, and I would learn about myself too, because again, I'm sitting there speaking, and so I thought about it, and I'll make sure, I'll give you my word, next one I do, I'll video it.
Let's go, everyone saw it. So. No, Coach, I appreciate you. I definitely want to give you your flowers because you impacted so many young men, And I see it in my brothers now that like how you impacted us. So I just want to give you your flowers and let you know like all the work you did up to this point in time mattered, and we appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate it very much, and you've influenced my life, and obviously having a chance to meet my children now is cool when you come back, and I know Amber thinks the world of you, and so it was mutual, and again, it was a plan that had a lot of purpose to it, So we should share with everybody real quick how you came to Wheeling before we jump off. Are we jumping off?
No, we can share it.
Okay. So we're getting a little feedback from my kids trying to roam into the room. So when John called me to come to Jesuit, we set up his visit, and when John drove in from Virginia, and I was ready to meet with him. I think the visit was scheduled at 2 or 3, and he called and said it was delayed. So I think he got in about 5 or 5:30. He pulled up in a car, and he got out of the car, and I said, "Hey, nice to meet you." And we walked campus for about 45 minutes.
Yeah, not too long.
The gentleman who drove him stayed in the car, and we walked campus and had a really good conversation, and it was clear John was a really good guy. I mean, that comes across quickly. But we walked, and I asked him, anything else, or you want to see anything, any questions? And he said no. After he just drove 5 hours, and he hopped back in his car and drove 5 hours back. That was his college visit, which I laughed. And then I think a couple days later, he called and said, "I'm coming."
Yeah.
So again, there was a plan there and a purpose for it all.
For sure. And so basically, everyone listening, I basically was like 5 hours late to my visit. I think he was already back at home. I had my buddies drive me up, and they're just like chill. I was like, all right, well, we'll see you in a minute. And he showed me campus, didn't have a wrestling room, but no wrestling room or nothing.
Yeah.
But that one conversation, it was like, hey, let's get a national title together. I don't know why it was so impactful for me, but got me there, and I'm super grateful and like blessed to have the opportunity.
We were very blessed and fortunate you came to, and everyone on that campus during those years would say that, not just wrestlers. So,
no, I appreciate it, Coach. And before we hop off, though, there's a lot of people here. They want to become better leaders in general of their households, and things like that. So, what's some advice you would give to them?
Well, I think there's always like 3 very key areas I talk about when I talk about this, and I think it's having humility.
Yep.
Above all, having humility, and that means waking up every day and focusing on it, because it's easy to get away from humility, and that's understanding your own struggles, your own challenges. Be humble. You're going to grow. You're going to be successful. You need to stay humble in those moments, and when you're being defeated, it's there. And then the second one's being appreciative. I don't know that anything can replace waking up and finding some dedicated time in your car or wherever it is, just to be thankful for what you have. And it really can, again, it changes who you are and how you approach your day when you're focusing on things that you're appreciative of.
For sure.
Because our natural tendency is to always focus on the things giving us struggle.
For sure.
And then the last one is, we just talked about this a few minutes ago, is just really embracing the idea that you're going to fail, you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have tragedy, things happen that are unexpected, and really knowing that there's so much growth in that for you, and there's a lot of wonderful parts of that with you being able to translate that to somebody else one day that's going through it. And again, because we can handle those situations in a way that's poor me or why me or everyone's out to get me, or we can handle it with the idea that this is part of life and this is part of my growth. So yeah, I think humility, appreciation, and understanding your ability to respond to adversity are all 3 areas that I think can really help people get grounded in their leadership, and things other people will attract to if you have that.
For sure. Hey, you guys just got some leadership advice from a SME, and an experienced one at that. So I appreciate everyone for listening. Coach Doyle, where can people find you?
I guess I'm not, I don't have much out there in the form of marketing myself, but my email is spdoyle240@gmail.com. I do have a Facebook, Instagram account. You would just look up Sean Doyle in Wheeling, West Virginia. You probably find me there. and I work for McKinley Architecture and Engineering, which it wouldn't be hard to find me if you were searching there.
For sure.
But yeah, I would encourage anyone that listens to this that could have any insights into the conversation today or questions to reach out to me. But John, I'm thankful for doing this with you, and thanks for coming up to the house today. And I always enjoy seeing you.
For sure. You want to talk about your golf, your fantasy golf?
This was no intent to be a marketing pitch, but one of the things I did over the years was build a fantasy golf game that people really gravitated to and enjoyed, and we started to turn it into a mobile application. So the mobile app Nightery, that's Nightery, is an app where we host some fantasy sports games that are a lot of fun, mostly focused on the golf, but we will do some things for the upcoming NFL season, and really generated it a social platform where you can chat and interact with other people. I think it's not common if you're linking it to like how like a DraftKings FanDuel type thing would be. It's more against social interactions with a group of people that know each other. So it's been a lot of fun, and just something I do on the side. There's always been a charitable side to it that we've tried to connect it to. That is how it originated. So thanks for that opportunity.
For sure.
So.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Coach. I appreciate you jumping on the Florida Masters podcast. Hey, and thank you for everyone for listening. I appreciate you. Florida Masters podcast. Hey, just finished an amazing episode with Coach Doyle. I'm extremely excited I was able to get him on the podcast, and I'm super grateful and blessed. He gave you a whole bunch of leadership skills, and you learned a little bit more about me. So thanks for listening to Florida Masters podcast.